Welcome to Awakening Heaven on Earth. Before we begin, take a moment to arrive. There is nothing you need to do, nothing you need to believe, and nowhere you need to go. Simply listen, contemplate, and notice what stirs and resonates within you. This is a shared space of reflection, presence, and remembrance. Now, let us begin. Welcome to this episode focused on Honor All Life, Unity and Stewardship. Recommended reading. In this episode, we explore a collection of books that deepen our understanding of stewardship, sacred relationship, ecological belonging, and our responsibility to care for the earth and all life. These readings draw from Indigenous wisdom, biology, ecology, psychology, philosophy, systems science, organizational leadership, spirituality, poetry, and contemplative practice. Together, they remind us that the earth is not merely the place where human life happens. The earth is the living community to which we belong. Stewardship begins when we stop seeing creation as an object to possess and begin recognizing soil, water, air, plants, animals, people, communities, and future generations as participants in one sacred web. Let us begin. In the book, Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmerer. This profound work brings together Indigenous teachings, botanical science, personal story, and the sacred practice of reciprocity. Kimmerer invites us to encounter plants not merely as resources or biological objects, but as teachers, relatives, and generous members of the living world. She reminds us that gratitude is not simply a feeling. Gratitude creates responsibility. When we truly recognize the gifts we receive from the earth, we naturally begin asking what we can offer in return. Through the lens of unity, this book reveals stewardship as a relationship of mutual care rather than one-sided consumption. The earth continually gives, but sacred relationship asks us to receive respectfully, take only what is needed, and help replenish what sustains us. Now consider this question. What gifts am I continually receiving from the earth, and what meaningful act of reciprocity can I offer in return? In the book, The Sacred Balance, by David Suzuki. David Suzuki explores the essential elements that sustain human life, including air, water, soil, energy, biodiversity, and relationship. Drawing from science and cultural wisdom, he shows that the human body is not separate from the natural world. The air outside becomes the breath within us. Water moves through rivers, clouds, food, blood, and every living cell. The minerals of the earth become the substance of our bodies. Through the lens of unity, this book reminds us that environmental destruction is never happening somewhere outside ourselves. Whatever diminishes the living systems of Earth eventually diminishes human life as well. Now consider this question. How might my daily choices change if I remembered that the air, water, soil, and living systems around me are also part of my own body? In the book, Stewardship, Choosing Service Over Self-Interest by Peter Block. Peter Block presents stewardship as the willingness to take responsibility for the well-being of the whole rather than organizing life around control, entitlement, and personal advantage. He challenges traditional structures in which authority is concentrated at the top, while others are expected merely to comply. Instead, he invites individuals and organizations to embrace partnership, shared purpose, accountability, and service. Stewardship in this vision means treating power as a sacred trust rather than a possession. It asks us to use our influence, resources, knowledge, opportunities, and positions in ways that strengthen the larger community and allow others to participate meaningfully. Through the lens of unity, this book reminds us that stewardship is not limited to caring for land, water, plants, and animals. We are also stewards of workplaces, institutions, relationships, communities, money, influence, and the gifts placed within our care. Every form of authority carries a spiritual question. Will I use what has been entrusted to me primarily for myself, or will I place it in service of the whole? Block's work invites us to move from ownership to responsibility, from control to partnership, and from self-interest to shared flourishing. Now consider this question. What power, resource, responsibility, or opportunity has been entrusted to me, and how can I place it more fully in service of the whole? In the book Earth Prayers, edited by Elizabeth Roberts and Elias Amadon, this collection gathers prayers, poems, blessings, and sacred reflections from spiritual traditions and cultures around the world. The voices within it honor mountains, rivers, animals, seasons, forests, ancestors, and the mystery of the living earth. The book reminds us that human beings have long approached nature not only through observation and use, but through reverence, gratitude, grief, celebration, and prayer. Through the lens of unity, Earth Prayers helps restore the devotional dimension of stewardship. Caring for the earth is not only a political responsibility or scientific necessity, it can also become worship, communion, and a sacred response to the beauty that sustains us. Now consider this question. What simple prayer, blessing, or ritual could help me approach the natural world with greater reverence each day? In the book, The More Beautiful World, Our Hearts Know Is Possible by Charles Eisenstein. This reflective work examines the story of separation that shapes many modern institutions, economies, relationships, and environmental choices. Eisenstein suggests that humanity has learned to see individuals as separate from one another, and human civilization as separate from nature. From that story arise competition, extraction, domination, isolation, and the belief that the earth is merely a collection of resources. He invites us into a different story, one rooted in inner being and the recognition that every action enters the larger field of life. Through the lens of unity, this book reminds us that ecological healing requires more than changing technology or policy. It also requires changing the story through which we understand who we are. Now consider this question. What story of separation am I being invited to release so that a more beautiful relationship with the earth and others can emerge? In the book Active Hope by Joanna Macy and Chris Johnstone. This book offers a compassionate path for responding to ecological crisis without becoming overwhelmed by fear, grief, anger, or helplessness. The authors describe hope not as passive optimism or certainty that everything will turn out well, but as a practice of choosing what we care about and participating in its protection. Active hope allows us to acknowledge the seriousness of the world's suffering without surrendering our capacity to act. It also honors grief as evidence of love rather than a weakness to be avoided. Through the lens of unity, this book teaches that courage grows when we remember that we are not acting alone. We are participants within a larger movement of life, seeking healing, renewal, and balance. Now consider this question. What pain for the world am I carrying? And how might that pain be transformed into one loving and life-giving action? In the book, The Nature Fix by Florence Williams. This research-based exploration examines how time in nature affects the brain, nervous system, mood, attention, creativity, stress, and physical well-being. Williams draws from neuroscience, psychology, public health, and environmental research to show that contact with the natural world is not merely pleasant recreation. It is part of what human beings need in order to function well. Natural environments can help quiet mental fatigue, restore attention, regulate stress, and reconnect us with a larger sense of place. Through the lens of unity, this book reminds us that nature is not an optional background to human health. Our minds and bodies developed in relationship with the living world, and that relationship remains essential. Now consider this question. How can I intentionally restore regular contact with nature as part of caring for my body, mind, and spirit. In the book, The Spell of the Sensuous, by David Abram, this philosophical work explores how perception, language, culture, and the senses shape our relationship with the more than human world. Abram suggests that modern life often draws human attention away from direct participation with the living earth and into an increasingly abstract world of symbols and concepts. Yet beneath those abstractions, the body remains in constant conversation with wind, light, sound, texture, weather, animals, and land. Through the lens of unity, this book invites us to recover an embodied form of belonging. The earth is not silent. She continually speaks through sensation, pattern, rhythm, movement, and presence. Now consider this question. What might I hear, feel, or remember if I slowed down and allowed the living world to speak through my senses? In the book, A Sand County Almanac, by Aldo Leopold. This enduring work of environmental philosophy combines close observation of nature with a moral vision known as the land ethic. Leopold asks humanity to expand the boundaries of community beyond people alone to include soils, waters, plants, animals, and the land itself. Instead of viewing the earth primarily through ownership and economic value, he invites us to consider what supports the integrity, stability, and beauty of the living community. Through the lens of unity, this book reveals that ethics must grow as our awareness of relationship grows. When land becomes community rather than property alone, care becomes a moral obligation. Now consider this question. What would change if I regarded the soil, waters, plants, and animals around me as members of my community? In the book, The Web of Life, by Fritjof Capra. Fritjof Capra presents a systems understanding of life in which organisms, ecosystems, and communities exist through networks of relationship. Living systems are not collections of isolated parts. They depend upon exchange, feedback, diversity, adaptation, cycles, and mutual influence. This scientific perspective challenges the assumption that any element can be altered or removed without affecting the whole. Through the lens of unity, this book provides a scientific language for interdependence. It reminds us that stewardship requires seeing patterns and relationships, not only individual objects or immediate outcomes. Now consider this question. Where in my life am I focusing on one isolated part while overlooking the larger web of relationships it affects? In the book Entangled Life, by Merlin Sheldrake. This fascinating exploration of fungi reveals a hidden world beneath and around us that challenges familiar ideas about individuality, intelligence, cooperation, and ecological relationship. Fungal networks connect plants, transform soil, recycle nutrients, influence ecosystems, and make many forms of life possible. Their existence reveals that the boundaries between organisms are often more fluid and relational than they appear. Through the lens of unity, this book reminds us that much of what sustains life happens beyond human sight. We live through countless relationships we do not control, fully understand, or even notice. Humility becomes an essential part of stewardship. Now consider this question: how might recognizing the unseen relationships that sustain my life awaken greater humility, wonder, and gratitude? In the book, Sand Talk, by Tyson Yunkaporta. Tyson Yunkaporta uses indigenous knowledge, story, pattern, symbol, and conversation to explore how human beings understand complex systems and live within relationship. Rather than presenting knowledge as detached information, the book emphasizes place, kinship, memory, responsibility, and the patterns through which life continually organizes itself. It challenges systems built on endless growth, rigid hierarchy, extraction, and the illusion that human beings can stand outside the consequences of their actions. Through the lens of unity, Sand Talk reminds us that wisdom must be lived within relationship and accountability. Knowledge becomes sacred when it helps maintain balance among people, land, ancestors, and future generations. Now consider this question: what relationships and responsibilities must be included in my decisions if I am to act with wisdom rather than convenience? As these readings come together, they offer one shared invitation. Remember relationship. Practice reciprocity. Choose service over self-interest. Honor grief. Protect wonder. Receive with gratitude. Restore what has been harmed. And live as a faithful member of the community of life. Science reveals interdependence. Psychology reveals our need for contact with the living world. Philosophy expands the boundaries of moral concern. Indigenous wisdom restores reciprocity, kinship, and responsibility. Organizational wisdom asks us to place power, resources, and influence in service of the whole. Spiritual practice teaches us to approach creation with humility and reverence. Together, these perspectives remind us that stewardship is not merely the management of natural resources, It is the guardianship of sacred relationship. It is also the faithful care of everything entrusted to us. Our land, our bodies, our homes, our work, our relationships, our communities, our money, our influence, our opportunities, and the world we will leave to those who come after us. The earth is not an object outside us. Her air becomes our breath. Her water becomes our blood. Her soil becomes our food and our bodies. Her communities make our lives possible. To harm the earth is to harm the larger body to which we belong. To restore the earth is to participate in the healing of ourselves. To steward our human institutions with wisdom is also to protect the lives, relationships, and communities that depend upon them. So before you leave this reflection, ask yourself what these readings are awakening within you. Where are you being invited to move from consumption into reciprocity? Where are you being invited to spend more intentional time in the natural world? What grief for the earth needs to be acknowledged rather than avoided? What habit can be transformed through gratitude? What place, creature, community, or living system are you being called to protect? What influence, resource, or responsibility can you place more fully in service of the whole? You do not have to heal the whole earth alone. Begin with the relationship directly before you. Learn the name of one tree. Protect one source of water. Restore one patch of soil. Share one resource. Reduce one form of waste. Use one position of influence to help another person rise. Help one child experience wonder. Offer one prayer of gratitude. No act of reverence is too small. No act of care disappears from the web of life. Every loving choice becomes part of a greater restoration. Let these books become more than information. Let them become invitations. Invitations to listen. Invitations to remember. Invitations to serve. Invitations to act. Invitations to honor all life. For in serving the earth, we serve the divine. In placing what we have in service of the whole, we become faithful stewards of sacred trust. In protecting life, we protect the sacred web that holds us. And in remembering that all life is one, unity takes root within the living earth. As we come to a close, remember that this journey continues in many expressions. This podcast is part of a family of partner podcasts. Awakening Heaven on Earth. The space between heaven and earth, and Living Heaven on Earth are 3 companion podcasts exploring spiritual awakening from complementary perspectives. Awakening Heaven on Earth offers the core teachings and mystical reflections on unity, love, and conscious living. The space between creates room for dialogue, reflection, and lived conversation around those teachings. Living Heaven on Earth focuses on basic spiritual practices that help embody these insights in daily life. Together, they form a unified journey of understanding, experience, and integration, inviting listeners to remember their connection with the divine, with one another, and with the living world. You can find all of them available on the same podcast streaming platforms wherever you listen. And if music helps carry these teachings deeper into the heart, the Unity, Awakening Heaven on Earth album is available on all major music streaming services as a musical companion to this journey. Wherever you engage, through listening, reflection, conversation, or music, may it gently remind you you are not separate. You belong to the one life, and heaven is already unfolding within you. Until next time, walk gently, love deeply, and embody heaven on earth.